Yes, I am a new professor.
Ve-
So the general field which I research, it's in the general field of intelligent robotic assistance. And in order to enable robotic assistance to become useful to our society, meaning to become service robots in our homes or nurses at hospitals or in elderly houses, we need to endow them with specific capabilities. For example, we want our robots to be able to close this very difficult perception action loop. And we want this to happen not only for the low-level actions, so how the robot would move and manipulate objects, so how it can effectively grasp objects and so on, but also how it can use its perception in order to do reasoning. We are looking into this interplay between perception and action and reasoning, let's say, to enable these robots to become of good service to us.
Very
So what we have succeeded on, let's say, is that we are now able to have a mobile manipulator robot, which means a robot that has two arms, a head, and a mobile base. So it's like a humanoid mobile robot. We have managed to make it effectively understand from a scene the object that it needs to grasp, and then to be able to do sequential pick and place autonomously without us needing to program something on the robot. But when it comes to more challenging tasks, like for example, needing these kind of robots to open drawers, fridges, doors, putting things in cupboards, taking out of things, or more fine manipulation skills like preparing a coffee for you, that it is beyond just picking and placing stuff. We are very, very far away still from making this robot understand how to operate with all their body in an environment. This is very, very challenging still. So we need many things. First of all, we need to be able to perceive well the components of the scene, such that we know which parts hold an affordance, so which can be graspable and for which task they can be used. Then we need this higher level of reasoning, so the robot will be able to think of the subtasks that you have to do this more complicated, easy for us things to do. And the other part is that you need better coordination in the body of the robot. So these things, for example, for us, is very intuitive to open the door of the fridge. And while we are opening, we are adapting also our body while this door is being manipulated. But this is very, very challenging to do with a robot without the robot, for example, hitting the door of the fridge, hitting itself, colliding and so on. So we have a lot of progress to do there. For example, for this, we look into neural representations, so geometric representations, and trying to understand distances by basically querying batches of thousands of points and trying to adapt the way the robot would move so that it doesn't collide and effectively complete a task. So this combines ideas both from, let's say, geometric deep learning and reinforcement learning, so that the robot can learn based on what it perceives, how to adapt.
Tell me, do you ever get frustrated with a robot and say, "I'm done with
Oh.
that. I don't want to work with robots anymore."
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is everyday experience for us. Basically, you start working with the robot, you set up everything, and then suddenly, while you have everything very nicely done in simulation, you try to do it on the real robot and actually it doesn't work. Or other things that happen is that the robot may overheat and then stop working. Or, you program things in a very good situation, and then suddenly your camera needs to be calibrated again, and then you have to start all over and till you find out what is going on. You can say, you can look at it, but no, I can see that it was working. What is happening? And then you say, oh no, I have to calibrate this camera again. And hours have passed and still.
I
So
see.
yes, frustration is a part of our job. There are things definitely that we can, by reinforcement learning, for example, we can see robots finding solutions that could be beyond what I could have taught, let's say, the robot by kinesthetic teaching. So I could have taken the arm of the robot and try to, put it in specific locations. And then if I just allow the robot explore its own capabilities in some sense, because the robots and the humans, we don't have exactly the same structure in our bodies, and every robot is completely different. So through reinforcement learning, we can see robots really discovering their abilities into learning how to do things, such as they can complete a task without being exactly what I would have done, right? So as long as they can deliver the thing, for me, it's okay if they do it in a completely different fashion as I would do it. But of course, they have to be successful. And how you can motivate the robot to learn is actually one complexity of reinforcement learning. So how do you define the rewards? How do you define what is a good behavior and what is a bad behavior, so that the robot is able to experience things and learn through this experience? Yes. Oh, this is a very, very interesting question. I would say that my first experiences with reinforcement learning was the one, actually, when we worked into combining the classical approaches like planning and learning models together with model free and trying to understand this interplay between thinking ahead and being very reactive. That is more the part of reinforcement learning, and how the robot can figure out things that go beyond of what I would have expected. For example, one of the first works that I have done here in Darmstadt when I arrived was on reinforcement learning, and we had a robotic hand that we wanted it to learn on the robot. So we were not doing simulation at all. We were training the robot, the robotic hand itself, and we wanted it to learn to open valves. And we had a hand with 4 fingers. And the robot found out that it can do this very effectively only using the 2 out of the 4 fingers. So it didn't lose energy to move the other 2 fingers, because it figured out that I can do it very, very well by just using my 2 fingers. And for that, I mean, this is connected to what I said before. This amazed me. And yeah, it was very, very, very interesting for me to see. Okay, so this was a difficult part because I lived most of my life in Greece. I am from Rhodos, and I then did most of my studies were in Athens, in Greece. So it was a bit difficult, especially because the climate is different compared to the climate of Greece, and especially the climate of the island that I come from. So you understand that it was a very, very difficult process. And on top of that, there was COVID. So I came in Darmstadt in November 2019, and after 2, 3 months, there was COVID quarantine. So 2 years I was basically at home. What I find here very, how can I say, something that really makes me feel complete is first of all, the one part is the part of the work that I can do here, things that I didn't have the ability to do when I was in Greece, because we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the robots, we didn't even have GPUs. Till the very end of my PhD, imagine, we took a lot of time to make a small cluster to be able to do deep learning and so on. So I am very grateful for the part that I have this opportunity here, and I am surrounded by people that come from so many different nationalities. And this is very, very interesting for me, and I think it makes me grow as a person. The other part that I am grateful for is, of course, my personal life here. So I have already friends and my partner here. So this makes me feel also well, on a personal level. And now that there is no COVID, what I try to do is to take small trips to Greece whenever I can, so that I can visit my family. Eventually, for example, my mother visited us in October, last October. She haven't visited us all the time due to COVID. So I think that now, given that we are very, very close to Frankfurt Airport, this gives us the opportunity to travel easily, and luckily, especially when the summer time starts, there are direct flights also from Frankfurt, for example, to Rhodos. So I try to balance this, but I have to do it only, for example, when there is no teaching in the university. So this is what I try to do, but to be honest, I become homesick, especially during summertime. That's all. The advice to Greece is to invest some money in education and into making the universities more self-sustained. Unfortunately, I believe that the system, the universities, they do a very, very good job into providing us with very, very good foundations. And I think we can see many, for example, people that stem from Greece, that they do very good careers outside of Greece. But unfortunately, Greece doesn't do any effort to go one step further, to keep people there, to create facilities so that they can keep people there and advance research. Because I can imagine on the one hand that the main income of Greece is tourism. So everything would go to this infrastructure, to tourism, and so on. But and they might think that deep learning and robotics are not relevant. But this is very short-sighted, because, for example, right now in my island, the hotels have shortage of people. There are no people to work in the hotels, because also during COVID, many people found other jobs or acquired skills online, and they don't want to do the job of cleaning, for example, the rooms in the hotels. So who is going to do this in the future? So you need robots. Also, you need AI systems to become more effective, to be able to process bookings, all these things. Like, if we think about it, automation is inevitable. And the countries that do not really invest, and they are sort in the direction of science in general, I would put not only AI, I think they are going to, yes, to not be able to keep up. So unfortunately, this goes to not only my country, but also other countries, I think, especially in the south of Europe and so on. So my advice would be to shoot for the stars regardless the difficulties. And if you really want to do something, it doesn't have to be robotics or AI, whatever it is, that people should feel an inner motivation, and they should not get disappointed and lose their courage. You have to be persistent, and you have to be resilient. And I think that people that come from Greece, especially from after the things that have passed, and also like other areas I could imagine, we have learned how to be resilient. And these are, I think, qualities that you can use on your benefit, and keep trying. This is the point, to not give up and keep trying.